What do we remember about this scene?
Lots of crying.
Oh.
Lots of crying. I think Anna cried for about 8 hours in this scene.
And I cried for like 5 minutes. I couldn't do it. I was.
Did it in the end though, George.
I know you were like at the end. You remember Anna was coming out of like this really crushing stuff. She was like, you would cry for Rachel, wouldn't you? You'd cry for Laura. You'd cry for your dad. You'd cry for your mum. Why would you cry for me?
It was hard. I don't know why you decided you couldn't cry in this scene, because you're so capable of it. And this was like your mother was talking to you, I was talking to you, I was crying, Anna was crying, all the people behind the monitor were crying, Anna crying, and you were just kind of like, I'm not going to cry. I don't feel like crying.
Everyone's basically having a go at Georgie.
The thing is,
And that's right. And then at lunchtime, you spent 20 minutes sobbing.
I know, but the thing is, it's like spur of the moment, isn't it? But the thing is, I got so mad at you.
I know you did.
Because I thought like I was just sick of this. I was just sick of crying, and I almost wanted to like say I don't want to film this anymore. This is just horrible. I'm not doing. I'm going to my trailer.
This is really juicy
Well, we
gossip. Just
actually-
watching you two talk about
We
this.
actually did give up. I remember that morning we decided, this is not the day to do it. You weren't in the emotional state for it, and we stopped, and then you went off and sobbed all the way through lunch. And then we had the weekend off and came back again. We had to have a weekend off because poor Anna had cried so much. Her eyes were all puffy.
I think the other thing I remember about that scene, or don't remember about that scene actually as a case movie, is the mice. I absolutely am so petrified of mice. I remember Andrew asking me quite early on during the filming what I was most afraid of, and I said mice, and he said, well, that's funny because you've got this scene on the stone table. And silly me, I just assumed that all of these creatures were computer generated. Why on earth would we need to have real mice?
Just to say, for this scene,
this is so-
Andrew, I was lying in bed, I was meant to be asleep, and even the focus puller didn't know this. Andrew took a foghorn and blew it in my
Yes.
face. I was so startled that I jumped up and held the thing, and I looked at Skander, and he started bursting out laughing.
It was
And I
so funny.
I think because the
Had to be
unfocus
there
puller
to
didn't
see
know
it.
it was going to happen.
No, both of us were just holding it, and then I just like burst out laughing. So I was staring.
I don't think I'm going to be able to use this commentary. I'm torturing William with a foghorn. I'm pursuing Anna with mice that she's terrified of.
Making Georgie cry for 3 days.
Nothing to me. Nothing to me.
I really thought if I got a real mouse and just showed you how inoffensive they were, you'd get over it. I didn't realize it was
and
such
you
a
know
phobia.
what? He was probably the nicest mouse of
He
all mice.
was lovely.
But I just wasn't having any of it. I was so scared.
And then like my mum, and then you were like, oh, well,
Well, then I got in trouble with your mum because I said you could take it home for a while, and I forgot to ask her first. Mr. Jingles.
And I remember this scene here. It was actually shot in broad daylight, and it feels so much different looking at it now than it was filming it.
Shot in the rain too. Actually.
It was so.
Yeah,
I
it
remember
was.
I remember feeling so sad in that scene, just because I really felt that Aslan had died, and I felt the responsibility of everything, and that at that point, and Edmund empowering me, it's such a change to my character. So
It's a big moment in the movie. I'm really fond of this moment where we go from the camp into the battle and we see this
The
transition.
griffin is cool.
Had you always planned that cut, Andrew? That sweeping across the map?
Yeah, we actually shot a green screen part for it. Yeah.
he's one of my favourite. The Griffins are one of my favourite good guys. The Fawns and the Griffins are my favourite good guys, and the Minotaurs my favourite bad guys.
just to let everyone know, this is a moment I've been waiting for months and months and
All
months.
your life.
Literally.
That wasn't actually on top of the cliff. That shot you just saw. If you look at the rock, I thought for a second they were going to kill me for revealing it.
No, I was actually just worried that you went off mic. But
Okay.
no, it was shot on top of the rock, because what happened when we put you on the edge of the cliff, Skander?
I
Even
was-
with a steel cable connected to your belt.
I couldn't see it. It was so scary. Because I'm scared. At the time, I was scared of heights. I was standing on ground that was sloping downwards. You have New Zealand wind, and I had this massive, heavy sword. And I had to lean over the edge and go like, fire!
You're about 4 feet from the edge with a steel cable bolted to the
I
ground.
was not. I was like half a foot from the edge, and you weren't there. You couldn't see it.
I was
Why
up
are
there
you
standing
so
beside you
mean?
saying, what's going on? What's the problem?
Well, now you've bullied Skander. I'm next.
One of the things that stands out in my mind about shooting at Flock Hill on the South Island was the helicopters, because not only are there so many sort of great sweeping helicopter shots, aerial shots, but also I thought I was so excited about getting the helicopters up to set in the mornings, and I don't think I was the only one. Andrew was sort of taking helicopter lessons in between shooting.
Not with any of you as passengers, though.
I have no interest in prisoners. Kill them all.
I love Andrew in this scene. Just the pans and the movement. Like, you've really captured that.
Oh no!
You know,
I remember when
everything
watching
turning,
this.
everything moving, you know, and everything about to happen. You know, it's like
I remember when watching this in the cinema, and how it was really shaking, and you've used sounds and like really bass, and you know the cinema just shakes, and you've got this sort of vibration feeling, and then you've got me.
I remember sitting behind William watching this just the other day, and him turning and smiling to his girlfriend, and you could see that he was like, I'm an action hero.
Andrew, you're not meant to reveal that.
Yeah, we should reveal who his girlfriend is.
They can cut that.
It's so funny. I remember looking at the unicorn and thinking, you know, wow, and sort of saying to Howard, oh, you know, how do you do that? And he was like, it's glue. I thought it was something.
When I first saw the horse, you know, because I'd been using other horses and because I had to go into quarantine for a few months, and when I first finally got on it, you know, I was a little bit more established as a horse rider, and I just loved those horses because I had two of them, and I really loved them, and I can remember, like, you know, because having to do bareback horse riding, my groins were obviously like, you know, tense because I was having to squeeze against the horse to stay on.
It's amazing, really. I mean, the thing that I was surprised by is, I mean, this is pretty challenging stuff, particularly when you're in chainmail, bareback on a horse. You've got a small monofilament to hang on at some stage. I think you came off this horse a couple of times during that rearing, but the fact that you stayed on it all is remarkable. And what really amazed me is how many of these shots we were able to do without the use of stunt people. Because, you know, there's certain shots where we start on your face and pull right out, and you're riding the horse, and although we covered it with stunt people, I ended up using far more of the stuff of you riding because you actually rode with better posture.
The thing that I love is that General Ottman can turn an ordinary cow's moo into a battle cry.
Well, I can just remember, I remember filming that exact moment just there, and Sled, my horse riding instructor, said to me, you know, do not gas the horse. Like, his only advice to me was, do not gas the horse. and I was cantering alongside this truck, and suddenly, you know, they say brake, and I pull my mask down, and I break away from the truck, and I just kicked this horse once, and we were just galloping, and it was one of the most peaceful moments actually probably of my life, because, you know, I was just looming with these New Zealand snow-capped mountains, you know, in front of me, and just this horse just galloping at full speed across this battlefield. I'd never felt it.
We should go.
So cold.
Anna, your acting in this I think is amazing.
Thanks, Will.
No, I really do. I think Anna's acting in this, and it's just so empowering and so sad, and you know everything's just come to a climax now, and it's like, you know, these are the choices we've had to make, and this is the consequences, and this is just part of it. You know?
After doing emotional scenes, you really do appreciate a lot more how.
So good. It's
Yeah,
really, 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 really good, this scene.
Was it hard, Andrew, deciding when to cut from the battle to this and when to slot it all in?
It was, and I actually changed it. Originally, the scene actually came before the start of the battle, and we shot this for nighttime. And as I was putting it together, before I'd finished shooting the battle, but while I was cutting the scene together, I sort of realized that the beginning of the battle didn't have the same power if you knew that Aslan was on his way. It didn't have the same emotional resonance because you feel like, oh, he's just going to show up at any time. So we actually reversed the order of that. And then there was just the pacing issue. It was the backwards and forwards of keeping the battle going, keeping the tension of the battle, and still being able to have these much more emotional moments in between. And I think a large reason that it ends up being successful is the music, is the work that Harry did with it, which kind of, you know, he uses the same theme here as we use at the beginning of the battle. It's just a much sadder version of the scene. And so that kind of keeps all of the elements pulled together.
Sorry, I've got to say, when me and Anna were filming that scene where we both go, Aslan! Remember, we had to do that so many times because remember, Anna did it one time and she was like, Aslan! And then I did it and I was like, Aslan!
I know, and sometimes it was exactly at the same time, which seemed really funny.
I think also what was sort of nice while watching this scene on Monday night, like, it was really interesting because it kind of reminded me of the colouring of all the film, which I'd just kind of been soaking it up subconsciously. But then when it goes from sort of dark to light in this one scene, it really sort of brings back how, you know, you had sort of one set of colouring for the pre-Narnia stuff, and then
I love that when the polar bears just suddenly start going and they have this sort of, they get up for a second on their hind legs and then just powerhouse down. So that was, this was fun because they'd fire it and then it would actually, the arrow just fall into the ground, and then you had loads of people running around with fire extinguishers trying to find it in case it blew up New Zealand.
Well, that's right. Later on in the scene, Anna had a certain number of prop arrows, and there was a moment on the cliff.
They were very precious, weren't they?
They were very precious. There's a moment up on the cliff when the girls arrived back at the battle, and Anna was meant to run up and just draw the arrow and get ready to fire. Remember, you fired one?
Yeah, I
the
couldn't
Weta guys
resist.
were like, they were running around looking for him.
I think I couldn't really resist. I was standing on the edge of this kind of cliff and I thought, I don't think they'll mind if I just let one go.
You claimed it was an accident.
I think, it's probably still there in the depths of Flock Hill.
I think another one of the great things about that battle scene, I just want to quickly say, was when Tilda breaks through the fire and the colour and that great contrast, I thought was
What was also quite amazing about that scene was that we were almost in peak summer, and there was snow on the back of these mountains, where Tilda was coming through. And I asked Andrew, about the continuity, and he said it might actually work quite well. Like just the fact that you could that you could say that the White Witch's Path still has like an element over Narnia.
Oh gosh!
I was about to say I loved that bit and then realised what happened. But yeah, I still loved it. Watching Will get thrown around.
Where are we going?
Hang on!
This scene changed a lot too. This scene there, at one stage there used to be a fight between Ottman and Peter, and it was Ottman that took out the unicorn. And it was actually really unfortunate because I changed it as we were shooting, and it ended up being Ginnebrick that took out the unicorn, and I forgot to tell Shane. And Shane and Kieran were actually rooming together, and Kieran went home that night and said, I killed the unicorn today. And Shane was like, what are you talking about? I meant to kill the unicorn. He was really annoyed with me.
amazing. This is amazing.
Alright,
Is all this
absorb it.
CGI, Andrew?
A lot of combination of all sorts of techniques in here.
Yeah.
Sometimes like he's real there, he's CG there. That's an entire CG shot. That's real. That's CG.
Yeah.
That's real. That's a combination of both.
That's
That's a
amazing,
combination of
right
both. It really changes technique constantly throughout. I think that's one of the reasons that it ends up being convincing is just at the point you think you're looking at one technique, it switches technique and it just fools you into not really ever knowing what's real and what's not.
It's absolutely
And
amazing.
Wills, this is, isn't, don't you do some, I'm going to shut up now.
This scene is one of the scenes that I still tear up at, and it always surprises me. But the moment when Lucy turns around and sees Tumnus, and you can see that she's trying not to cry, and then just finally, and this was one of those moments you had no trouble crying. I remember this is actually a moment that you just actually broke down and cried.
I think it was better because I actually knew James
Yeah.
and I didn't really know Aslan because Aslan, of course,
Yeah.
is basically CG, but this is like James basically being frozen.
Yeah, so you were really able to project that emotion. I know that's this little moment here. And so when I still watch it, I still quite often tear up. Well, that was one of the things with Georgie's tears. Sometimes when she cried, she does have an expression that's very similar to smiling.
Yeah.
And there were some takes we couldn't use that were great crying takes because it looked like you were smiling. And I remember even right back when the house was being bombed and you were in the bed looking scared.
Yeah, and we had to do that
we had
again.
to do that again because it looked like you were laughing.
I'm just about to get killed.
I love how the scarf drops before he.
Just a little signal.
Yeah.
Well, no, I remember when I first looked at it, and yeah, in the early scene, I think we're talking over that, and I remember just looking at it and just thinking, "Wow, did James actually cast that? How was
No.
that? How was that made?"
No.
I think he did do a body cast, and then there was some sculpting work done on top of that.
He had his arm like bent and it wasn't in the right position, so it was hard to.
It was hard to match up, yeah. And this was an idea we added right near the end, the idea that we would see other troops to help explain how it is that Aslan showed up with many troops. It's one of my favourite bits coming up here because it's Skander on the battlefield.
Oh yeah, my one bit fighting.
Your
So
bit of-
everyone look at me, not Will.
One bit of fighting coming up. But as it so happened, in all of the takes, the moment that Skander turns around and slashes, there was nobody there. So it kind of looked like he was just slashing in midair. And we had to actually, the very nice folks at ILM added a Cyclops. There he is. There's the Cyclops that you take down that was never actually on the set.
No. It's because I've already swiped someone that's out of shot, and then as I follow through and I turn
Basically,
around.
Skander is just not really a warrior.
I'm amazing. Shut up,
Him
Will.
and Mr. Beaver have had to
Will.
go off and hide.
You get like all of this stuff. Just let me have one moment. One moment.
I have to say that I think Mr. Beaver's chainmail is
I love
like
Mr.
the
Beaver's
coolest
armor.
outfit in the whole show.
He stole it from a dwarf.
At one point at the top of the mountain, we had a sort of a stuffed, fake, obviously fake beaver, and some bad model just for reference. And as I drew my sword, and I went, yeah, I knocked him, and I think he fell off. He fell off the mountain. Oh, here's where you cut out me pushing.
That's right. This is where there was a poor Karen. He had to do that fall like 7 or 8 times, and it ended up just slowing the moment down. It was like once you got going, you really wanted to see you get to the witch. So we ended up cutting out the bit where poor Karen had to fall off several times.
That was Skillsville.
That's really good bit, that injured bit, Skander, as well.
It's
Kind of
pretty
cringe
convincing.
for you.
I think actually Tilda really got him. That's why.
No, and it was always prodding me in the stomach. It really hurt.
I love that shot too. That's one of the most heroic shots in the film. The one where you're running at her. What's fun actually through this section is because a lot of it wasn't actually happening when we shot it, is watching the backgrounds. And you can see a lot of fun little bits of animation. There's some cats attacking a giant. There's goblins falling off the cliff.
Gosh, oh my gosh.
My favourite shot in the whole battle is of Tilda's two swords
I
just
remember
missing
filming
Will
that.
from above. I think that's such a cool shot.
Well, just to see the battle scene finally done, it's just so relieving and so so uplifting because we worked for such a long time on it, and like I had to learn all of that with the help of Alan Popwarton. He just choreographed all of it for me. And so when watching it back, it's like it's kind of rewarding. A lot of ways.
I think Andrew was like as keen on the battle scene as you were. Will. You were both such boys about it. I mean, Andrew had the previs for the battle done before
Before I finished working on the script.
Yeah,
Oh, gosh.
exactly.
You get to play with swords.
But I don't.
That's actually really cool, that bit, Andrew, where it's just like the swords are just flying in the air.
Tilda was pretty formidable in this too. I'm amazed at how skilled she got with her swords. That was pretty real. Remember that? That was actually one that you had that plastic guard on, but it actually really did kind of hurt.
You know, it really got round to my arm, and it was just absolute agony.
But it made for a very convincing scene.
It did.
There she goes.
That absolute peace is amazing as well.
Yeah, it's an acceptance of fate there. And this was a moment that I was really trying for, was to get this kind of moment where it was just in your head.